Hive project for COEN 160. First, I will walk through the graphical interface, then I'll walk through the console interface, and then I will go over the code base itself to highlight some of the features and how it works. So let's start with the graphical interface, and once the game is launched, you see this screen right here where you're able to enter your name and then go ahead and choose the difficulty that you want to play as. I will choose easy. You can also view the scoreboard here, which shows the top 5 players as well as their scores, the difficulty that they played at, and their names. And then afterwards you click start game, and then here you can see that 5 different letters are displayed. This is for the easy mode. Harder ones display less letters, 1 letter less each. And you can also see that since another user had the username Paul, I played before, now I automatically generate a random string afterwards, a string of numbers, to make sure that each username is actually unique. And you can also see your score. We can also view the scoreboard from this screen. We can view our past guesses. Since we didn't make any guesses, they don't appear here. We can submit the guess, and we can end the game. So let's go ahead and end the game. We see our place with 0 points. We're placed 84th. And we see again the top 5 players before as a scoreboard. We can exit the Hive, or we can start a new game. So let's go ahead and start a new game. Say Paul again, start on easy. We get more letters. It's randomly generated between, I believe, 5 and 7 letters on the easy difficulty. Hollow, there you go. Using multiple letters, so we can submit the guess, and there you go, it's valid, so we can go ahead and earn 8 points. It's reflected up here, and we can go ahead and end the game now, and we can see that we actually placed 11th before because we have 8 points. We earned 8 points. So that's the graphical interface. We can exit the game here, and then since I'm using the model view controller framework, the design pattern, I'm able to change the graphical UI to a console UI right here, and this will create a console UI class instead, an object of the console UI class. And so if we run this, we can see that we're now playing inside the console. So yet again, we have all these 5 rules. 4 characters or longer. Characters must be from the Hive. Entry must be a valid word, which is checked through a dictionary that I imported. As well as the entry must contain the first Hive letter. That is the second rule that I've added. And the entry must be unique. You haven't guessed it before. So let's try on easy again. My name is still Paul. So this is our new word. And here I can see that there's a very easy word, mint, here. So let's go ahead and guess that. Again, we can see that it's valid and that I've earned 4 points. And then to stop, once we're done guessing, we can type in stop. And then it again displays the scoreboard and shows where I've placed and how many points I've earned. And the game is now done. So that's pretty basic, and I have the 2 UIs to play this game, the console and the graphical UI. So now let's go ahead and go over the actual code base. So first, let's take a look at the diagram. And as you can see, I have the model view controller framework, so design pattern. So you can see the model here, the controller, and the view. The view is inherited by the console UI and the graphical UI, as you would expect. And then the Hive is my controller. So that is where the function for guessing is. That is where the function for submitting the entry is, beginning a new game, etc. And then the model, I have a user inheriting from the model. And then I also have the Hive player inheriting from the user. And the player really has all of the Hive-specific functions, while the user has the name and the basic constructor, and then the model also has the basic constructor. Now, in addition to that, in addition to the model view controller, I have some supplemental classes, such as loading the file, which is an interface that is then implemented by the scoreboard and by the word bank, because both need to load a file since I'm storing the scoreboard as a text file. And then the word bank loads the word file, the word text file. And then there's also the word validation interface, which is inherited by or implemented by word bank. Now, scoreboard and word bank allow me to maintain the user score, as well as maintain or checking if a word is inside the dictionary or a part of the dictionary. And the scoreboard is essentially a list of users. It's an array list of users, which allows me to easily keep track of their names and scores, since users, a user object has a score, a difficulty, and their name associated with it. Then I also have the difficulty class, the guess class, and the letter value class. These are just helper classes that make the code run smoothly. So looking through the actual code itself, we can go ahead and start from the model. So here we're creating a model as a player model. So the player model has the field score, the scoreboard itself, because that is how I'm able to actually save the scores. And then it has the difficulty, past guesses, as well as the Hive. These are associated with the player, the scoreboard and the Hive in particular. This decision was made because it allowed for the cleanest implementation, since players are created every new game. So every new game there's a new player, and so that allows me to easily generate a new Hive associated with this player. And so you have the constructor. You have the default constructor, which sets the difficulty to medium, and then you have a constructor with parameters that allows me to set the score, the difficulty, and the name for the player. The getters and accessors are pretty easy. One to point out here is the get Hive as string method, which allows me to, essentially I store the Hive as an array list of characters, as you saw here, but then to display it for the console UI, for example, or even the graphical UI, I need it as a string just to easily display it. And so I use a string builder to go ahead and actually create a string out of those characters. The setters and mutators are pretty basic as well. And right here, the ensure unique name is what allows me to actually have a scoreboard. And even if a user enters a name that's been chosen before, it automatically generates a unique name here. And you can check while the user exists, it will keep adding this string of 6 digits to the end of the player name. So you can have essentially a very long player name, but it is guaranteed to be unique. And then add to score and load scoreboard are fairly basic as well. Now, the next thing to go over, of course, is the Hive. So the Hive is kind of the brain of the code and how it operates. So we have the word bank here, which is essentially, it pulls in a file, the words.txt file. It loads the text from the file, it loads each word and stores it in a hash map, which is important because it allows me an O of 1 access time, which is important since there's about 400,000 words that are being loaded in. Now, this word bank is created, or it is a private field, and then you have the constructor here, which essentially just uses the super constructor for the controller, which we can actually go ahead and take a look here. As you can see, it just assigns the model and the view. And we can also see that it also has the stages of setting up the new game, beginning the new game, and ending the new game. That is what the Hive goes ahead and overrides. So you have the guess function, which essentially checks if the entry is valid and then submits it. Now, this is important here. These are the entry response messages that embody the 5 rules that I've set up for the game, that the entry is too short, etc. And then if none of these apply, if none of these checks fail, then it just displays that the word is valid and that I earned X number of points. And this, of course, these functions, the is word made from Hive, is word length correct, etc., is used for validation. So once it validates, then I'm able to get the response message, the accurate response message. For submitting the entries, it's, again, pretty basic logic. You get the weighted guess value based on the difficulty. So if a player is playing on easy difficulty, then they get less points per guess than a player on a harder difficulty, which makes sense since you have more letters to guess from on the easy difficulty. And yeah, and it creates a guess, an object of the guess class, and then adds, uses that guess to add to the player's points, and then past guesses as well. Getting weighted guess value is pretty basic. We're getting the letter value based on essentially Scrabble's letter values. Right here, I've went ahead and mapped all of these, and then you retrieve these with some pretty basic retrieval functions. And then we're able to get this guess value and assign it to the player. And these are all of the verification steps. So if the word is made from the Hive, is the word the correct length? Again, pretty basic checks here. The game management is the important one. So essentially, for setting up the new game, we first load the word bank because even when someone presses they want to play a new game, the load word bank will be present since the Hive is not recreated, which is really nice because you don't want to load in 400,000 words every single time you create a new game. And then you generate the new Hive, which is essentially the letters, and then you load the scoreboard based on the player, which is, again, the model. Since we're using model, we need to map it to a player, and then we need to load the scoreboard and clear the player's guesses. We then go ahead and render the start screen, and then set the model attributes of the player, their name, etc. Begin new game essentially just renders the game screen from the view. And then for taking the turn, we use the view's display entry response, and then we essentially guess, which then checks if the entry is correct and then does all of that correct logic. For the end game, again, we just save the score and we render the end screen, but notice that we don't dispose of the word bank again, which is very important. So loading the word bank is just creating a new word bank, which is handled in the constructor of the word bank class. And for generating a new Hive, we essentially just get the length of the Hive based on the difficulty from the difficulty class, which is an enum class with some added functions that make it very easy in terms of multipliers, getting the difficulty as a string and getting the length, etc. And then once we have the length that we want, we essentially we have a while loop to add letters create a random letter, first of all, and add it if it's unique to the Hive until we reach the desired length. And then we set the player's Hive. And that's about it. And then we go ahead and actually set up the new game from the main function based on the controller. And yeah, that's my project. and it's been very fun to work on. It allowed me to incorporate all the different things that we talked about in class. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the game, I guess.